So I just recently put a Q&A up on my Instagram, and I got so many questions about how I became a doula, the road to becoming a doula, how you start a doula business while working another job at the same time. And so I just got so many, and I was like, I will not be able to answer these effectively on Instagram stories. So I thought I'd make kind of a short podcast episode. So if you're new here, I'm Heidi, half of the moms in the middle. Ellie is unavailable this week. She has some family in town. We're going to skip the podcast, but I just decided to make a solo episode. So we're going to talk about my story of how I started my business as a doula, and I'll kind of give some tips and advice along the way about how you can also start your own doula practice if that's the job that you want. So I'll give you a really short synopsis of how I started in doula work. I have kind of a longer story about my journey to wanting to become a doula. I think it's on our first episode when we go through introductions. So if you're more interested in this story, you can hop on over there. I'm not going to harp on it since I have it over there, but I'll kind of just give you a short background. So I graduated business school in May of 2020, which was the height of the pandemic. I had a 1-year-old. I didn't want to put her in childcare. Was kind of looking for remote jobs, kind of like feeling stuff out. But in the time, I thought, well, I'm kind of bored now that I'm done with school, so I'm going to get my doula certification just for fun. It's kind of always something that I was interested in. I was working with newborns as a nanny before I had my daughter. I was working at a nonprofit helping pregnant women with resources, community resources as a volunteer. It was obviously something I kind of already dipped my toes into a little bit. I really wanted to just go work for another nonprofit, but I thought in the meantime, I'm going to go get my doula certification. Did that, and really there was just so much that stood out to me during my doula training that taught me so much about how doulas can support families in ways that I did not see doulas supporting families in my community. And as I got into doula work, I realized that that was a false assumption. I didn't know enough about the doula community in my area to know how they were supporting families, but just from what I've seen on social media from people who had used doulas that I've talked to, it wasn't I didn't see doulas as providing a full range of support across all different types of pregnancies and birth experiences. I really only saw them as a helpful tool to having an unmedicated birth or a home birth, which is exactly a false assumption, like I just said, but it isn't what I saw. And so going through my doula certification, learning so much about how we can help low income communities, how we can help families having more medically complicated birth experiences, who are experiencing high risk pregnancies and high risk births. I just developed such a passion for wanting to step in a more practical way into those families' lives instead of going into the business nonprofit area and working more in an administrative way with families and community resources. And so got my doula certification, was inspired, sat down one night and wrote up a business plan on how I can do exactly the things that I was inspired by during my doula training. So I created my business model, which has a 10% promise. So all of the income that I make, 10% of it goes back into a doula scholarship fund, which is called, under my business, my Choose What You Pay. In this fund, people are able to apply. I have no criteria to apply. A lot of the doula programs I saw working with low-income families in my area had sliding scale fees. And as someone who's middle class, I just know how difficult it is to be middle class these days and how you can still be living paycheck to paycheck as a middle class citizen in the United States. So I didn't want to give any sort of income requirements. I really wanted to just be kind of like a trusting relationship between me and my clients, of those who felt like they needed the financial support in order to afford doula services, that they could apply, state how much they can reasonably pay for doula care. And then if I had the extra money in my doula scholarship fund, I cover the rest of the amount of money that they could not pay, so that I am still getting, me and now the other doulas who work on my team, now that I have other doulas on my team, are still getting paid the same amount of money for every single client. So then we are not incentivized in any financial way to treat any of our clients differently based on the amount of money that they're paying. When I wrote up that business plan, I sat down and was like, I need to figure out a way that I can start this business instead of going to work a 9 to 5 or a part-time, job. Luckily, my husband was fully supportive. A huge part of that support and my ability to start my business was by the pandemic delaying repayment of student loans. So I kind of lost that timeline of in our budget, we are already living like within the means of my husband's income because I was going back to school, or I was in school and I was watching my daughter full time when I was not in school. And so we were already living within those means. But once my student loans started to have to be repaid, there was kind of this like, you have to be working in some way to be able to make those payments on your student loans once they need to be repaid. So luckily I was bought a lot of time to try to like figure out logistically how to start my own business. And so that's kind of the backstory. My advice to anyone trying to start a doula business is to treat it like you are starting a business. I don't know what it is about the family support world or like woman-led industries that a lot of us don't take it seriously ourselves, these jobs. And they also, the people around us don't take this job as a serious job. The amount of times that I, as a fully fledged business owner, making a substantial income for working part-time, have been asked about my fun little hobby of doing doula work is excessive and disturbing. How many people think that just because I'm a woman working in a woman-led industry, supporting families through birth, doing something a little bit abnormal and not like a typical 9-to-5 job that people know about, that it's just a fun little hobby that I'm doing and my husband's supporting me financially, which could not be further from the truth. So if you want to go into doula work, you need to have the mindset of you are starting a business. And with starting a business comes sacrifice. Most people do not turn a profit on starting their own business for the first 3 years. At least expect the first year to just be covering your costs and not to be taking a paycheck. I will say there are lots of different types of doulas. A lot of the questions that I receive seem to be more focused on like starting a doula business and doing it as like your actual job. There are absolutely different types of doulas. There are community doulas, people who do doula work for free for their community as like a volunteer, as an outreach, or people who just ask for a small fee to kind of cover some of their costs associated with being a doula at your birth. But those people aren't typically doing full-time doula work. It's not their main job or means of income. If you are planning on starting a professional doula business, you absolutely need to look at it as starting a business. I understand most people come to the doula profession through just their own experiences with birth or their experiences seeing people in their community go through birth. But you need business skills, or you need to hire out business skills in order to have a professional, successful doula business. I luckily had just graduated business school. I still had to bootstrap a lot of things and learn a lot of things just based on Google searches or asking my dad, who also owned a business, questions, and just figuring shit out. But without that, I don't think I would have been successful as quickly as I was, because I did know the means to marketing and the means to starting a successful LLC and gaining clientele, if that makes sense. I will say, throughout my journey to starting doula work, we did come up with a separate way for me to kind of supplement my doula income while we were waiting for me to gain a profit from my doula business. So I had some questions on my question box of people asking, like, how do you work a job while you're also building your doula business? And I have seen doulas do that. I actually have a doula on my team who just recently quit. She was working full-time for a company, then went to part-time, and now she's like quitting that side of her job, her like kind of administrative job, to work full-time in her doula business. But that is incredibly rare in the doula industry. Oftentimes I see people who are trying to work a job on top of being a doula just quit being a doula. They never like make it per se, or they just find that it's like not what they're wanting to be doing with their life, and they'd rather have a more like stable 9-to-5 position. If you do that, you need to have a job, obviously, that has incredible flexibility and understanding as to your job and role as a doula and what that looks like. Like if you're going to be at a birth for 40 hours, like what is that going to look like for your 9-to-5 job? Do they have the flexibility for you to not work for them and then work like over the weekend or something to make up those hours? Or like what does that look like? And I would also suggest, if you're trying to work a job, even if they have flexibility, and start doula work at the same time, that you take like one client a month to start with to see, does this flexibility actually pan out to when I'm at a birth, my job is actually understanding of this? Because doula work is such a sensitive job to have. It's not like other jobs where you can just call off or just have somebody take your place. Of course, you can have backup doulas. You can have other people on your team who can take over for you. But this is somebody's biggest day of their life. So you cannot handle like not being at a birth lightly. If you aren't going to be attending a birth or the full capacity of a birth, you need to have a very, very dang good reason why you're not going to be there for your client. And that is not, oh, my job said I need to come in today. That is not a good reason to not be at somebody's biggest day of their life where they hired somebody and trusted somebody to be there for them in that moment. What I did to make money while I was building my doula business is we renovated I'm actually sitting in it right now, our walkout downstairs basement. It's like a walkout to our backyard. It's completely separate from our main living space. We didn't use it at the time as a main living space. We renovated it into a complete separate studio apartment and started renting it out on Airbnb. Now we are privileged in so many ways to have that option. We had the money to renovate the space. We live in an area of town that is very popular for tourists. We live in the city. And so a lot of people come in for like sporting events and shows and stuff. It walks out to our fully fenced backyard. And so we were a very popular destination for people traveling with dogs. We allowed dogs because we have dogs, big dogs, and we love dogs, to use our space. And so we were very successful in renting out our studio apartment as an Airbnb. Eventually, it got old to just have people in our space and to not have use of the space, especially once we had our second child. We just wanted more space for our kids to play. And so that us getting sick of renting out the Airbnb happened around the 2-year mark of me starting my business. And that was kind of when my business was really taking off and I was actually cutting myself an actual paycheck every single month that was the same every single month. And so it was really easy for us to transition off of stopping renting the Airbnb. And now it is what I use for my office. I also have clients come over for meetings here. It's a great space for us and for me to use for my business. And I'm super grateful for it. Again, not everybody has the ability to make some sort of passive income while they're starting their own business, but it just comes back to figuring out how you can actually start your own business and not seeing it as a hobby. If you are wanting to be somebody who is a professional birth doula and runs a business and actually makes an income that they can take home and support their family. The last thing I'm going to talk about before jumping into all the nitty-gritty logistic business end of starting a business is how important a supportive partner or just general supportive support system is to getting into doula work, especially as a full-time job. I see so many doulas give up on being a doula or not get to do it to the full capacity that they want to because they just don't, either their partner's job like can't accommodate them being a doula and having a weird work schedule, or their partner is just not willing to take up all of the extra tasks that are necessary when the person who's a birth doula is gone for long periods of time. And that's just, if your partner is not supportive of the lifestyle that you're choosing, that's just going to be a super fast way to burnout and just exhaustion. Because I know personally, if I'm at a really hard long birth, I come home so emotionally exhausted and defeated because it's just a highly emotive job. Like, you're using a lot of emotion, you're doing a lot of care, you're using a lot of empathy. And when I get home, the last thing I want is a guilt trip from my partner about all the stuff that they had to do around the house and with the kids and how bad the kids were for them or how much they wanted their mom when I get home. Like, I need some time and space to decompress so I can go back to showing up for the next person who might be in labor a day from now and need me to be highly emotive for them, as well as show up as a mother to my kids and be empathetic and compassionate to them. And so having a supportive partner who understands the difficulties of doula work and how emotionally captivating it can be is, and time and physical exhaustion at times, being up at all hours of the night randomly without any sort of like warning that you're going to be up at night, is extremely important to being successful in this role. So a lot of people see doulas, think like, wow, I'd love to have that job, but really looking at your lifestyle, your partner's lifestyle, your partner's support, your financial situation, your partner's job, childcare, all of that stuff, looking at it logistically before making a commitment to, again, be that person's biggest supporter and trusted ally during their birth experience is so, so important before stepping into this role. And I will say, like, if you have a desire to work in doula work and you hear this and you're like, there's no way I could actually make it work logistically, then you know what? Like, learn a lot about birth, learn about being a helper, learn about supporting women and all of the ways that they need to be supported during a delivery that aren't medical. Learn advocacy skills and offer to go to your sister's birth if she wants you there and help her, or your friends. Like, that's what the original doulas was, the people in their the community who supported women and loved on women and helped them through their birth process. You can still do that once a year for a friend, or get to be known as the person in the group who helps people or answers those questions that they have during pregnancy. You can still be like a self-educated support person, because that was the original doulas and where the role of a professional doula came from. But actually stepping into a professional role where you take money, you sign contracts, and you are trusted by people who are previously strangers to be that person to them during their birth, you need to make sure you have the support system to make that happen without having situations that could come up that could prevent you from being that person and being able to be the person who is fully present during their birth and not be pulled into things in your home life. Okay, now that I bored you with all of my warnings about doula work, or how I even got this business started to begin with, let's chat about actually getting your doula business off the ground. What practical things did I do to actually get clients? So when I first started, most people to get like their official certification need 2 births or a certain amount of hours attending birth to get officially certified. So first I just worked on getting my births for official certification, because once I got a certification, I could then put myself on websites like Doula Match and stuff like that, to start getting my name out there a little bit more. The first thing I did was join a bunch of mom Facebook groups in my area. I actually have unjoined all of them because Facebook groups, mom groups, are so toxic. I do have one of the doulas on my team is on some of the Facebook groups and keeps our name in the mix when people are asking about doula care on there. But for me, I just hated it and found myself just so frustrated with the advice I was given on there that I was just like, my energy is better used other places. So I got off. But at first, that's how I found my first ever client, was somebody who was towards the end of their pregnancy, was having a difficult pregnancy, was planning for like an unexpected induction. And she was just like, hey, like, I don't have a lot of money, but like, I would love to have a doula. Does anybody know anybody in the area who's like just starting out or something? So I commented that I was new, I was training. I did charge, I think my first 2 births before I was certified, I charged $400 for, which now my fee is $1,500. So obviously like a huge difference, which that, I've been practicing for 4 years now. So that grew gradually with time. I personally just didn't feel comfortable doing work for free for my certification. I mean, during a birth, you're spending hours and hours and hours with someone. And even if I wasn't a certified doula, I did take the training and also have a lot of education to help, and I would be there supporting them for a long period of time in any way possible that I could. So I did charge $400 for my first 2 births. She hired me. I attended her birth. That's like a whole story in of itself, because it was during COVID and she ended up being COVID positive, and I had to do virtual support for my first birth. So that's a whole other story. My second birth, I'm pretty sure, was a friend of mine who hired me for my certificate for like my low fee. I'm pretty sure that's who my second birth was. But yeah, so I kind of just got my name out there with like friends, family, via Facebook online groups, and started just to like get my name circulating in those spaces. I will say, once you start to get your name circulating, it's a lot easier, because then you have people like my first client was in those Facebook groups then circulating, like when she had a good experience, she was then like giving people my recommendation and my name and my number and stuff like that. The second thing that I did pretty much like right off the bat of starting my business was start an Instagram account and post informational posts about things that I was learning as I was training to be a doula, and as I was attending my first births on there. I did not have a lot of followers at all at first. Like, I mean, I stuck around like 200 followers for probably the first 2 years of my business. And I don't even have a ton now. I have like 2,400, I think, somewhere around there. And so that the size of followers matters very little. It's the connections that you make with your followers and the information that you're putting out that do matter a lot. I see a lot of doulas who only have like a small following, just like never post. And every time I posted, I felt like I gained more and more community trust. So like the more transparent information I put out there about how I support births, my belief systems around births, my values, things that I'm learning, things that I wish I knew when I first started. And, you know, every time I posted, I was telling the people who followed me something about myself. And those people were not just past clients, future clients. They were also other providers in the community who work with pregnant people. Pretty much right off the bat, my main followers were like other people in the community who worked with pregnant women. So like chiropractors, pelvic floor PTs, some midwives in the area, I'm trying to think of who else, lactation specialists, pediatricians, things like that. In Kansas City, we tend to just have a very supportive birth and postpartum community. And so whenever like we see a new doula Instagram pop up in our area, we tend to just like all follow them to get to know them and who they're about. And a bunch of people did that to me, Kansas City providers. And the more that I posted, the more I gained their trust for referrals because they got to know things about me as I was posting and seeing how I support clients and how I talk and my demeanor and all of those things. And over time, I built trust with them without even meeting them or putting time into marketing material. It was all, you know, my time wasn't free, but all the marketing material on like social media is free. So I started doing that, started getting more and more referrals from people inside the birth and postpartum community. And that is really where my website comes into play. So as I started to get my name out there, really actually pretty early on in my business, so pretty much synonymous with starting like a business Instagram page, I made my own website through Squarespace. I didn't pay anybody to help me with it. I just looked at online tutorials, used a Squarespace template, made my own logo on Canva, and just really put a lot of time and energy into the content on my website and helping my name, like my content, be very synonymous with my values and what kind of client I wanted to attract. And so right away, I kind of found the niche of supporting all different types of birth experiences. So I wrote a lot of stuff about hospital births and about epidurals and about high risk pregnancies and how and my Choose What You Pay program, my Doula Scholarship Fund, to try to attract the type of people who would want to work with me. And my website is my biggest money saver. I say that in all honesty. So like the amount of time that I save by having a direct website that pulls out the audience that wants to work with me is astronomical. I very rarely have initial consults that don't end in bookings. And I think that that is mainly because people who find me on Google and are looking through all of the different doulas can get a very direct picture of who I am, who my team is, and how we support births from my website. So a lot of people click on my website and click off and go find another doula because I don't match with their preferences, but those people were never going to hire me anyways. If they found my website and it was pretty generic doula stuff, they set up an interview with me and we chatted and I didn't vibe with them, they were going to go pick another doula anyway. So why would I waste my time setting up initial consults where I could be doing other things for my business that actually make me money, instead of almost doing that initial interview for people on my website and in the content of my website. So originally did my whole entire website for free on my own. Definitely didn't know a lot about SEO, but I tried my best. And that website worked for me. A lot of my pull from that website was from people finding, like providers finding my Instagram, clicking through on my Instagram to my website, and then referring people to like my website and stuff, to work with me as a doula, or like put them on their referral list. It just takes time, but over the first year, doing all those things, 3 things combined, getting my name out there, through just interpersonal connections and clients and like my first clients and things, getting an Instagram, and getting a website that people can connect to me on, started to gain me traction. I would say after my first year, I was pretty much booking the amount of clients that I wanted to, on a monthly basis. I think I did like 2 clients a month for the longest time, and I was pregnant with my second child also around that time. So I was doing about 2 clients a month, and I was pretty nervous going on maternity leave. I was going to take a 6-month maternity leave, that I would come back to like no business. Like I felt like I had just started gaining traction, that I was just going to like drop out for 6 months, and that everybody was going to think that I didn't really like work anymore. But that didn't happen. Consistently posting on Instagram and continuing social media, absolutely continued to garner me attention and people wanting to work with me during my maternity leave. And so I came back to maternity leave with a full schedule. One note I will make about my website is that I did end up redoing it away from my like self-made website, just because it was not the best logo or, super professional. It was just kind of like thrown together. I did transition off of that logo and style and like self-made website for using a template from Doula Design Co. Julie over there is amazing. So I worked with her. I hired her to redo my logo and my branding. And then I also then bought one of her Squarespace templates that are specifically designed for doula business. And then I was able to plug in all the logos and branding and color schemes and everything that she gave me into one of her templates. And it was so easy, like to the point where I did my whole entire website. I spent like 2 hours every single night for a week redoing my website, because I want my website back up and running. And let me tell you, that thing is gorgeous. I get so many compliments on my website. So many clients. Like I will say my niche is very much like young professional women, like 2-income households, married, stuff like that. I get so many comments from my clients who are like professionals in the business world, or other like office jobs, saying like, the reason I reached out to you is because how professional your website looked. Like you looked like a legitimate business based on other doula websites that I was looking at. Your communication was clear. Your logo was crisp. Like everything was cohesive. I get so many clients literally telling me that that's the reason why they reached out to me, and that they reached out to only me, interviewed me, liked me, and hired me right then and there. And so when I say your website is one of the the best investments you can make, I seriously mean it. And I would even get comments about my website being professional before I paid Julie to do it all. But I will say that was a huge, just like, it really up leveled my website and what I was sending out to people, and also just getting really cohesive branding across like my shirts and my business cards and my website and my Instagram. Like all of that just helps reiterate your brand, so that people who come and contact you, like when a nurse or a midwife or an OBGYN was like, oh my gosh, I loved working with you, they then start to recognize your brand. And maybe you give them a business card, but the more you can like reiterate that and tell them like, check out my website, read about me, and then they can get to know you, and get more comfortable with you. Check out my Instagram, like that kind of stuff. It just keeps encouraging them to then refer like people to you. The more that you do that and keep your branding consistent and keep your message consistent, the easier it is going to be to build up trust in the community to get your doula business off the ground. Another thing that I really liked about working with Julie at Doula Design Co. is she has a huge focus on SEO. So all of her like templates and stuff encourage SEO, which is search engine optimization. She also has a whole guide on all of her templates on how to build a website that is SEO focused to get your website picked up by Google and other search engines. And so I was showing up on Google before I used her for my website. That's actually a funny story. I'll tell that next. But I will say that like using her website and using a bunch of her tips definitely got me ranking higher, as well as getting a Google Business Suite, which I did right when I started my website, and having clients leave me reviews. I was like a pest for my first couple clients, being like, please leave me a review. Please leave me a review. You can just put 4 stars and 1 sentence, or 5 stars and 1 sentence. Like, I don't care, but just leave me a review. And once I got to like 5 reviews on Google, I felt like I really popped up on Google ratings, because my business just became like more verified in the eyes of Google, of like I was a more legitimate business. Another thing is that my business name is The Block. I named it that because I wanted it to be a very like a block is kind of like a group of different people who kind of are all in one space. And I wanted to kind of represent that it's like an inclusive community of people wanting all different types of birth, all kind of being in one space, and using like doula support for their birth experience. But my name doesn't have anything about doula in it. And so I was like, part of the SEO that I did, this is the funny story. When I first started out with my own website, is I literally just I Googled like doula Kansas City, like what I think a client would Google. And then I looked at the businesses that popped up first, like all of the doula businesses in my area that popped up right away. And most of them said like birth support, doula Kansas City, like in their name. And so I literally, I just looked at what was successful. I looked at like their front page, what was like on the header of their front page, what was successful? How are these people getting to show up in Google? And so I literally changed the name of my business in my Google Suite to Block Births, and then just dash Kansas City Doula Service. And that alone jumped my page up so high in the Google Maps, which is like the first thing that kind of shows up, like the Google Business Suites on Google Maps. When you Google things, it's like the first top little header, and then it's kind of like the Google search results. When you look for like a business in your area, that jumped me up into like the top section of the Google Maps, which is the first thing that you see before your Google search results when you're looking for businesses in your area. And so just putting the exact keywords that people would be searching for jumped me up and it's been my biggest way that I've gotten business, like referrals from the start, is people seeing me in Google, my Google Business Suite on Google Maps when they search doula in Kansas City. So do I get referrals now from the community and providers like all the time now that I've been practicing for a while? Absolutely. But still to this day, like my top referral when I'm, looking at data from my intake sheets is they found me on Google, and then they clicked on my website. They liked my website. They liked that it was professional. They got a good gist of who I am and who my team is on the website. And then that is why they decided to work with me, reach out, usually again, book initial consults, because I have all of that very clear on my website and on the intake. I also encourage people on my website to go onto my Instagram, and other members of my team's Instagram. There are no secrets here. Vet us out, see our personalities, see what we're posting about on stories, see the posts that we've made about how we support births. Get comfortable with us, and then see if you want to support your birth, because it is an extremely personal endeavor, and people want to get to know you and who you are as a person and see that. And social media provides us that just closeness to our clients without having to put time and energy into building that closeness with each specific client, if that makes sense. Another thing I highly encourage doulas, especially when it comes to like treating a doula business like an actual business and not just as a hobby, is getting all of your accounts separated from your individual accounts. So I personally have a QuickBooks subscription is how I kind of keep my accounting together. I also have a business bank account. I use Lili, Lili. A lot of the other doulas on my team use that too, and I've only had good experiences with it. And then I also use a client management system. I use Dubsado, but there are so many out there. Probably ones that are better than Dubsado is just what I have all my stuff on now. I don't want to switch it now. And so I would highly, highly recommend. Client management system is not necessary until you have a large amount of clients. Maybe people would disagree with me, but I just kind of figured it out and kept like notes on my phone and stuff before then about where clients were until I had a lot of clients, and then I definitely needed a client management system so stuff didn't fall through the cracks. But accounting software and a business bank account, I think, are extremely necessary when starting your own business, even if you're like, I only have one client. I only have a client like every month. I wish I did that so much sooner. It is so much easier for me to track where all of my money is going and how much I can pay myself and keep my business expenses separate from my personal expenses when tax time rolls around and things like that, by having those resources. And like I said, I wish I did it a lot earlier. I think I probably spent more money than I should have on things because I didn't have a clear picture of what was coming in and what was coming out, because I didn't have a really, really effective way of tracking it. I also don't feel like I probably got as many expenses tracked, and so I probably paid more taxes than I needed to as well. So 100% recommending, as you're setting up your website, your SEO, your business, getting an LLC, getting insurance. That's another thing. Get insurance for your doula business. All of that stuff. Make sure you're also setting yourself up financially to be able to grow without having to backtrack and do those things after you've grown, because that is far more difficult than just having those things set up before you grow as a doula at all. I hope that kind of gave you a clear picture as to what the first 2 years of my doula business looked like and how I got clients and kept my business growing and continuing to grow into what it is today. I just want to talk about for a little bit continuing your doula business past that point, that 2-year mark. I think it's an average, doulas on average only last 2 years doing doula work. And a lot of that is because of burnout and too much give, like too much financial give, too much time give. And so boundaries are so important if you want to build a lasting and sustaining doula business. My clients come first. So if I'm feeling highly like tapped out, well, of course my family comes first. I meant in business. My doula, my clients come first. So if I'm feeling tapped out, I'm not going to be posting on social media. My TikTok can wait. My Instagram can wait. My website doesn't need a new blog this month. That's another thing. Make a blog on your website, because that helps SEO too, because you're writing so many words that it helps Google know what you're talking about and like what your business is, so they can send people there. But after I reached that 2-year mark, when I came back from maternity leave, shortly after coming back from maternity leave, I was starting to just get so burned out because I had been giving too much and been asking for too little. Like, I had not been asking for enough money. I have not been asking for enough support. I wasn't putting boundaries in place with my clients of like, no, I don't need to come to your birth when you're like not even feeling contractions yet, but you're in for an induction, so I should be there. That's not true. I shouldn't have been there. So I started to put a lot more clear boundaries in place with my clients, that they knew what to expect and that I was able to be more supported and sustain the business longer. Also, just things as simple as like, I would like never take a break to go eat, like doing doula work. I would just like eat snacks on my back. And I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, every client I've ever been like, hey, I'm going to go run down to the cafeteria for 20 minutes and I'll be right back. Like, this is what position you should do with this. And this husband is how you should support her. Like, has been so understanding and totally cool with it. I don't know why I didn't do that when I was first starting out. I think it just came from the insecurity of feeling like I had to like please my clients so much that they would refer me and give me a good review. But no, you have to have some boundaries in place to treat yourself like a human being, even in such a caring and emotive industry. And then I still was just getting like burnt out in terms of just like always being on call, exhausted. I had a new baby, so like he wasn't sleeping, so I wasn't getting enough sleep. And that is when I decided to create a doula team. So I trained a new doula that year that I came back from maternity leave. Then I also had a more established doula come onto my team. And I decided to switch us to a team model of care where we swap call. And that has been life-saving and keeping me as now like an experienced doula, not only giving my knowledge to new doulas who join my team, but also continuing to work in the community and be able to serve clients. I know so much more now as a doula who's been working for 4 years as a doula than I did the first year I worked as a doula, or even the second year that I worked as a doula. I just see births more clearly. I see problems during births more clearly. I feel way more confident communicating and advocating in the hospital space. And I hate to see so many doulas who are just getting on their feet and really getting that confidence in birth and really gaining that like expertise in supporting births, because it really only comes with experience, and that's why you charge more the more experience you get. I really hate to see them burning out and leaving the practice or going back to a typical job just because they can't get their schedule in order, and like their family is suffering, their life is suffering and things because of it. And so, yeah, I created a doula team. I was so nervous that I was going to lose everything that I built because no one would want to work with a doula team, but it was the exact opposite. Again, I used my website in my favor to explain why we worked as a doula team and what. And I really focused on the benefits to the clients of like, you're getting more experienced doulas who aren't burnt out, who haven't just been out of birth for 24 hours and then now you're attending your birth. You're getting multiple doulas, like insights into birth problems that you're having. Like we're texting and trying to figure out like, why is this baby in a bad position? Like what can we do to solve it? You're getting all of that because you're working with a doula team. And like, also this is what we're getting in return. And in the age of like self-care, people understood you can't give everything to your clients because you also have a family and young children at home and need to have somewhat of a life. And our business has continued to grow, and we've been able to keep raising our prices, and also by raising our prices get more money into our scholarship funds so we can help lower income communities and our families in our community. And it has just been so fulfilling, and I'm so grateful that I figured out a way to do this work in a way that fits my community and also fits my life. Are there hard days? Are there hard births? Are there days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I just worked 9 to 5 and I didn't have to be out of birth all day Saturday or leave my child's gymnastics class to go to a birth or like whatever? Yes, but the rewards outweigh the risks. I hope that this conversation was helpful if you're planning on doing doula work or want to become a doula. I hear my kids screaming upstairs, so that means I need to go upstairs and nurse the toddler for nap time. But leave your questions in the comments or hop into my DMs on Instagram. Leave me a comment on one of my videos. I'm happy to answer anything else that comes up. I also have a course on hospital birth support for doulas, on how you can be more proactive about supporting hospital births and more higher risk deliveries or deliveries that people choose more medical intervention. It also focuses a lot on breaking down bias as a doula, on medical intervention and how different people choose to give birth, and also on advocacy skills in more highly medicalized settings. So if you're interested in some of the things that I've learned throughout the years and that I've kind of hinted on talking about, you can absolutely go check out that course as well. I'll put the link in the comments.